Despite having lived in the French Quarter and been exposed to voodoo, I cannot claim to be an expert. Although many residents of New Orleans have also been exposed to voodoo and may dabble in it, the majority are really even more ignorant than I. This really forms the basis of my vlog. Is voodoo an African religion transplanted to the New World and merged with Catholicism? Or is it the superstitions of people living in New Orleans, loosely based on this African religion? I don't propose to answer this conundrum, but simply to highlight the tensions these different definitions create within its practice in the Big Easy. Not least as the answer very much depends on your cultural experience and background, but probably lies between the two, or more correctly, it's both. The other tension we must be aware of is that New Orleans is a bastion of Catholicism, surrounded by evangelical Christians. An aside which perfectly illustrates this is that when Dixie launched Black and Voodoo beer, the state of Texas attempted to ban it, erroneously claiming it had skeletons on the label. We cannot therefore discount how voodoo, Catholicism, Satanism get convoluted by New Orleans neighbours, such as voodoo involving child sacrifice and orgies. In fact, why does everything evangelists don't understand, nor even care to understand, involve child sacrifice and orgies? Nor indeed can we discount how such misconceptions influence those who believe that they have some knowledge of voodoo, including those who merely dabble in it. Voodoo is a largely oral tradition. It has no formal creed nor specific sacred text, and no unifying organised structure or hierarchy. Practitioners will often adapt voodoo to suit their specific requirements, in doing so often mixing it with other religious traditions. Of course, Western hegemony attempts to define religion by comparison with Christianity, especially Protestantism, but such a lack of structure and definition are common, for example, in what we call Hinduism and Buddhism. But unlike what I've seen others claim, especially Indians, I would not wish to suggest that African religions are simply Hinduism. Voodoo certainly has its origins in African religion. Voodoo means spirit, deity, creator, or pure light, and this has remarkable resonance with my own religious beliefs, which originate in Java. New Orleans practitioners do believe in a single creator, known as Bondye. This one god does not interfere in daily lives, but the spirits do. There are a pantheon of spirits, sometimes erroneously defined as gods. However, I suspect these are more related to the animistic consciousness of all creation, but especially to saints in Catholicism. These are known as Lua or Orisha. Natural forces impacting on these spirits are earth, air, fire and water. So something common across magical beliefs across the world. The deities are a personification of these forces. Therefore, they are more like what I see as angels, holding the universe in balance. Places like crossroads, rivers and cemeteries are thus favoured ceremonial places for ritual. Ceremonies are often devoted to cleansing and tend to involve physical activities such as dancing and drumming to reach the soul, very similar to Sufi dervish tradition. Cleansing often involves smoke. This is also used to remove the negative energies from participants in the ceremony. Although most voodoo practitioners have altars in their homes, often with statues of Catholic saints, candles and holy water on them. Indeed, most practitioners are devout Catholics. priests and priestesses will be devoted to one or other of these lua. As there are thousands, I'll simply list a few of the more important ones. Papa Lebat, or Liba, Lebas, or Lamba Limba, the intermediary between the spirits and man, sometimes seen as a trickster. In Haiti is associated with Saint Lazarus. He must be invoked first at the beginning of every ritual, since he is thought to be the channel through which other spirits can be contacted, and indeed the channel through which other Lewa can commune with humans. Papa Lebat is the gatekeeper between the mortal and supernatural worlds, and has the power to either grant or refuse humans the means to contact the spirits. Our Blanc Denny, also known as Monsieur Denny, the Voodoo Magniac, and the Grandfather Rattlesnake, although often called Dambara Sultans in New Orleans, the spiritual sovereign and means wisdom, and associated with St. Patrick, he is also associated with snakes. Dembara is thought to have been a primordial father of early life and creation. He is depicted as an enormous white serpent, and thought to have shed his skin to form the mountains and valleys of the earth, and shaped the heavens with the coils of his body. Dambara resides between the earth and the sea, in constant movement, roaming the landscape of his making. August spirit of war and metal is associated with St. James Major. Darant Samedi, or Baron Samedi, or Papa Gede, spirit of the dead and magic. It is worth mentioning, however, that death is not seen as an ending, but part of a cycle. He is therefore called upon when people are dying to ease the transition. He is notoriously foul-mouthed, cracking filthy jokes, swearing, and indulging in the hedonistic pleasures of tobacco and rum. Devotion to Darant Samedi has become a part of the famous New Orleans jazz funerals. Darant Samedi's wife is Maman Brigitte. Maman Brigitte is unique in the Voodoo pantheon, being the only Lewa whose roots do not extend back to Africa. Maman Brigitte's roots can be located in Ireland. She's associated with St. Bridget of Kildare, and like her Catholic counterpart, she is thought to be a powerful healer and protector, particularly of women. Maman Bridget may also be associated with the Celtic pagan goddess Bridget, thought to be the pre-Christian forebear of Saint Bridget. Voodoo's adaptation of an Irish saint deity is most likely due to the presence of indentured servants, predominantly from Ireland and Scotland, in the Caribbean during the colonisation of Haiti. It seems that these indentured servants may have shared some of their beliefs and traditions with enslaved Africans, with whom they lived alongside. Like her husband, Maman Brigitte is believed to be capable of curing any illness, unless of course she decides to alleviate the mortal suffering by claiming for the afterlife instead. Protecting and nurturing, Maman Brigitte is often called upon by mortal women, especially mothers and pregnant women, to keep them safe and to ease the pain of childbirth. She is also sometimes called upon by women to protect them from physical harm and abuse. Her reputation for wrathful punishment of wrongdoers is legendary. Oya, the goddess of air, winds and hurricanes, is associated with Saint Teresa and Saint Catherine. Ashuru, or Ocean, goddess of rivers and waters, who is probably the same as a deity called Samunga, called upon by practitioners in Missouri when they were collecting mud. Yamyeya, however, is the spirit of the ocean. The Lee, Grand Zombie, whose name meant great god or great spirit. The term zombie derives from the Congo Bantu term Zambi, which means god. According to the Bantu creation story. Zambi is the creator god. Lee Grand Zombie is a major serpent spirit of worship amongst the New Orleans voodooists. Women often dance with serpents to represent the spiritual balance between the genders. Voodoo rituals in New Orleans almost always include a snake dance to celebrate the link to the ancient knowledge. Monsieur Antoine Assanquet, also known as Onson Kere, Onsa Tia, or Yonsu, is associated with good fortune. Erzuli, also known as Ezili, is a slightly different concept in Lewa, and not an individual, but a family of water-dwelling Lewa that represents femininity, beauty and sensuality in their numerous aspects. The two most prominent Ezulis are Ezili Dantor and Azli Freda. Azli Freda is believed to be somewhat vain and flirtatious spirit, presiding over sensuality and romantic love. She's generally depicted as a beautiful woman with black or brown skin, bedecked with jewellery and adorned with a crown of luscious hair. Ezili Freda enjoys a scandalous existence, keeping a company of 3 lovers within the Lewa pantheon, Dambala, Oguru and Gedi Nimbo. She does not limit her sexual exploits to the other Lewa. Like Baron Samedi, amongst several other Lewa, Ezili Freda also likes romance and to seduce humans. In fact, she is also said to have a fondness for human lovers, both female and male. Ezli Dantor, meanwhile, is head of the Ezuli family. She is most often depicted as a regal woman with 2 scars on her cheek, and is syncretized with the Black Madonna of Chetaskawa. Associated with motherhood and protection, Ezli Dantor is especially revered in Haiti. She is thought to have been one of the guiding spiritual forces amongst the rebels in the Haitian Revolution. Monsieur Agusu, or Vert Agusu, is also associated with love. Veritique is a spirit associated with causing illness. Monsieur Dembras is linked to death. Charlo is a child deity. Jean Monkombala is also known as Kambala. Each of these spirits are represented by a symbol, a verve, like a sigil. By mastering these spirits, it's possible to master the physical world. Heaven and hell are not seen as removed, but a part of this world. Thus, good and evil are seen as natural. The evil is relative. For example, racism and genocide are evil, but magic isn't necessarily. In common with tantric practices, the aim of marriage ceremonies is to get one of these deities to possess oneself, through which the spirit can heal or confer blessings. The possessed individual will be called a horse. Unlike traditions I'm more familiar with, these spirits leave the horse after the ceremony. There are 4 phases to a voodoo ritual, all identified by song being sung: preparation, invocation, possession and farewell. These songs are used to open the gate between the deities and the human world and invite the spirits to possess someone. The rituals voodoo are based on African traditions that have absorbed various Christian and especially Roman Catholic influences. Reflecting this Roman Catholic influence, some recorded ceremonies have, for instance, begun with a recitation of the Apostles' Creed and prayers to the Virgin Mary. On June 23rd, which is summer solstice and St. John's Day, is the most important ceremonial day in Voodoo. But these are simply borrowed dates. The celebration began in the 1830s by Marie Laveau on Bayou St. John. It involved head-washing ritual combined with a public party. Big celebrations on this date have taken place on the shores of Lake Pontchartrain during the 19th century. Various contemporary practitioners celebrate All Saints' Day, 1st of November, which they, following Haitian Voodoo, link with Lewa Gede. Of course, this also coincides with Halloween, or All Hallows Eve, when families head to the graveyards of the French Quarter and beyond to whitewash and sweep the tombs clean and decorate them with fresh flowers. In the 21st century, Voodoo groups wear white clothing for their ceremonies, influenced by Haitian Voodoo. Those assembled may dance around a central post, the poto mintat. Patterned flags called drapos may be brought out, while songs are sung in Haitian Creole. Drawings called veve may be made on the floor in chalk or cornmeal to invoke the spirits. Offerings will be given to the spirits. Sacrifice was a recurring element of Louisiana Voodoo, as it was historically practiced, as continues to be in Haitian Voodoo. Some 21st century practitioners of Louisiana Voodoo do sacrifice animals in their rites, subsequently cooking and eating the carcass. But this is not a universal practice in New Orleans Voodoo. Although there's little proof that human sacrifice took place in New Orleans Voodoo, persistent rumours claim that white children were being abducted and killed during some of its rites. Animal sacrifice is a traditional practice in Africa. It is done as an offering to the spirits, and also to ask the spirits to provide protection, healing, and other requests. When African slaves in the United States, the practice continued in Voodoo and Hoodoo. The main animals that are sacrificed are chickens. Plates of food may be left out encircled in a ring of coins. Alcoholic drinks may be poured on the ground, as I've witnessed in both New Orleans and Havana. In particular, Florida water is a mixture of alcohol and herbs, used in many blessings. A light salt in many traditions, it's seen as a universal cleanser. Furthermore, London gin plays an important part in Efi Kepe ritual in Calabar. There's a strong belief in karma, therefore use of voodoo for evil is considered dangerous, not least as spells return fourfold. It's about being in tune with one's inner spirit and therefore mastering oneself and the world. At its heart, therefore, is the power of the human mind. From the early 18th century, enslaved West Africans, the majority of them from Bambara and Congo, were brought to the French colony of Louisiana. Their traditional religions would have been syncretized with Roman Catholic beliefs of the French. This continued as Louisiana came under Spanish control and was then purchased by the United States in 1803. From southwest Nigeria, the Yoruba people brought Santeria to Cuba and Colombe and Umbanda to Brazil, whilst Voodoo originated in Benin and spread to the Caribbean, especially Haiti. Essentially, these are very similar beliefs. Whilst I cannot claim any expertise on Santeria, I have witnessed it in Cuba, especially its music. Certainly I'm aware of many superstitions in Cuba which were derived from it. Furthermore, I cannot say that I'm knowledgeable about Yoruba magic, but I am somewhat about Efi Kepe following a visit to Calabar. It was used as a social and legal code, with transgressors being made into slaves. Hence, when Liverpool slavers came, the Efik sold their criminals into slavery. So profitable was this trade that the Afik began capturing neighbouring tribes to sell into slavery. I was also struck by how popular Freemasonry was in Calabar, which seemed to have merged with Ekepe, not least as my own uncle was a Liverpool Grand Master. This Ekepe strongly influenced Abuku in Cuba and Florida, which also has strong parallels with Freemasonry. From Benin, the religion merged with Catholicism in the Caribbean. In Haiti, a more aggressive voodoo developed from the context of the brutality of slavery. When this moved to New Orleans, it also merged with the African spiritual traditions and Western magical tradition. Voodoo is very much a part of the Haitian Revolution, and following this there was an influx of slaves from Haiti. But New Orleans attempted to reduce the number of slaves from Haiti, fearing a slave revolt in Louisiana. According to legend, the first meeting place of the voodoo practitioners in New Orleans was an abandoned brickyard in Dumaine Street. Those meeting here faced police disruption, and so further meetings took place largely in Bayou St. John and the shores of Lake Pontchartrain. The religion probably appealed to members of the African diaspora, whether enslaved or free, who lacked the recourse to retribution for the poor treatment they received. Voodoo probably spread out from Louisiana into the African American communities throughout the Mississippi River, as there are 19th century references to voodoo rituals in both St. Louis and St. Joseph in Missouri. Following the Louisiana Purchase, the Americans began to suppress voodoo. In New Orleans, this restricted voodoo practices to Congo Square in Armstrong Park, where I used to DJ on WWOZ. At Congo Square there is an Egon or ancestors tree, where offerings are made, especially oranges for Ushon. Also coins left for the ancestors and shells to Yamania. This forced voodoo underground, and hence its seemingly occult nature. But voodoo was kept alive largely by women. Indeed, it is a matriarchal religion. Of course, I need to mention Marie Laveau, but cannot be clear on what she actually contributed to voodoo, apart from its continuing popularity within white America. Certainly she commercialised voodoo to become the tourist attraction that it is today in New Orleans. We know that her religious rite on the shore of Lake Pontchartrain on St. John's Eve in 1874 attracted some 12,000 black and white New Orleans. Although her help seems non-discriminatory, she may have favoured enslaved servants. Her most influential affluent customers, runaway slaves, credited their successful escapes to Laveau's powerful charms. Both her mother and grandmother practiced voodoo, but she was baptised as a Roman Catholic and attended Mass all her life. Laveau worked as a hairdresser, but also assisted others with preparations of herbal remedies and charms. It's claimed that this gave her information which she was able to use to help enslaved Africans. She died in 1881. Her influence continues in the city. In the 21st century, the gravesite, or believed gravesite, in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 is a major tourist attraction. Believers of voodoo offer gifts here and pray to her spirit. Across the street from the cemetery where Laveau is buried, offerings of pound cake are left to the statue of Saint Expedite. These offerings are believed to expedite favours asked of the voodoo queen. Saint Expedite represents the spirit standing between life and death. The chapel where the statue stands was once used only for holding funerals. Marie Laveau continues to be a central figure of Louisiana voodoo and of New Orleans culture. Gambles shout her name when throwing dice, and multiple tales of sightings of the voodoo queen have been told. Those visiting her tomb, which is highly restricted now, turn around 3 times and knock 3 times. I performed a similar ritual at La Mira Grossa in Colon Cemetery in Havana. This is to be granted in a child, and in my case it did indeed work, and I felt it was working as I was at her tomb. I also knocked 3 times on graves of my mother and father-in-law when visiting them in Java. Another of the most prominent practitioners of the 19th century, mid-19th century, was Jean Martinet, or Dr. John, whose name was adopted by the singer Max Rebnak, a free black man who sold cures and other materials to various clients, amassing sufficient funds to purchase several slaves. He alleged that he was a prince from Senegal who'd been taken to Cuba and there freed before coming to Louisiana. Again, I'm somewhat acquainted with the tradition from Senegal, which merge with Sufi mysticism. A related term is hoodoo, which may originally have been synonymous with voodoo. Over time, hoodoo came to describe the brand of African American supernaturalism found along the Mississippi, entailing the use of charms and spells that made little reference to deities, and therefore is removed from the religion of voodoo. However, in New Orleans, hoodoo displays more Roman Catholic influences than hoodoo elsewhere in the Protestant southern states. Specialists in hoodoo, known as doctors or workers, often worked out of their homes or shops, providing gree-gree, powders, oil, perfume and incense to clients. Such practices concerned the Anglo-Protestant elite, with regulations being introduced to restrict various healing and fortune practices in the city, resulting in many hoodoo practitioners being convicted and either fined or imprisoned in the first half of the 20th century. Aspects of voodoo beliefs would include the importance of crossroads, often represented as a cross, where the paranormal and the world meet via Papa Labe. In West Africa, amongst the Yoruba, blood sacrifices are left for Eshu Elegba at the crossroads. The crossroads is a spiritual door to the spiritual realm where Eshu Elegba resides. The skull symbolises the ancestors, with ancestor worship being very important. This appears to be derived from the Congolese slaves, for whom ancestor worship was central to their beliefs. Saint Anthony of Padoue is the patron saint of the Congo and is linked to the predominantly Congo-descended population of New Orleans. The snake represents Tembara Sutans and therefore wisdom. The use of dolls with pins stuck in it. The purpose is not to harm someone but to tap into energies. Thus it is often used for healing and may contain a hair or fingernails of the patient. The spirit is placed within it like odums and jinns are in objects in Indonesia, especially gemstones. Nevertheless, the voodoo doll has little to do with either Louisiana voodoo or Haitian voodoo, although blessed dolls are found in hoodoo. It's derived from the European tradition of poppets. It's possible that the act of inserting pins into a human-shaped doll to cause harm was erroneously linked to African-derived traditions due to a misunderstanding of the Nisidi Nkondo of Bankongo religion. Tarot is an important divination tool in New Orleans, which comes from the Western tradition, although other divination tools are also used. Money mojo bags, or gree bags as I knew them, and a term used in Africa, often contain a variety of natural objects, so common in the animistic tradition I know so well from Java. A common charm for protection or luck would consist of material wrapped up in red flannel and worn around the neck. The uanga is a charm used to poison an enemy, contains the toxic root of the figeri maudet tree, brought from Africa and preserved in Louisiana. Now, I've tried to research this and I'm not certain that that's true, that it came from Africa. It maybe resembles an African tree. The ground up root was combined with elements such as bones, nails, roots, holy water, candles, incense, holy bread or crucifixes. The administration of the ritual frequently evoked protection from Jehovah and Jesus Christ. Gree may actually cause harm. So either through the power of suggestion or the fact that they contained poisons to which the victim was exposed. One example of a voodoo curse was to place an object inside the pillow of the victim. Another involves placing a coffin, sometimes a small model, sometimes much larger, inscribed with the victim's name on the doorstep. In other instances, voodoo practitioners sought to hex others by placing black crosses, salt, or mixtures incorporating mustard, lizards, bones, oil, and grave dust on the victim's doorstep. To counter these hexes, some people cleaned their doorstep or sprinkled it with powdered brick. But healing plays a prominent role in 21st century Louisiana voodoo. Various shops called botanicas exist in New Orleans to sell herbs and other material for use in these preparations. Like essential oils in Indonesia, different perfumes are used for different effects. Candles are often used for the names on them for specific effects. In New Orleans superstition, red candles are used for love, pink candles are used for peace, black candles for black luck to others, and green candles are for money. From the 1960s onwards, the city's tourist industry increasingly referenced Louisiana voodoo as a means of attracting visitors. In 1972, Charles Gandolfo established a tourist-orientated New Orleans Historic Voodoo Museum. Several companies also began providing walking tours of the city, pointing out locations alleged to have a prominent role in the history of voodoo, and in some cases staging voodoo rituals for paying onlookers. One company, Voodoo Authentica, began organising an annual voodoo fest in Congo Square each Halloween, involving various stalls selling food and paraphernalia and a public voodoo ceremony. Obviously, the more salacious aspects of what tourists believe voodoo is exploited in New Orleans. Maybe the most amusing was Chicken Man, who used to bite off chickens' heads in nightclubs. When charged with animal cruelty, he was forced to give up, but not before a clash with Popeye's Fried Chicken after appearing in a club in Kenner next to one of their restaurants. Today, the French Quarter has many shops selling commercialised trinkets based on voodoo talisman. They're even found in grocery stores.